Welcome to the High Queen podcast.
Prepare to embark on a journey through books you'll fall in love with, as well as the leading ladies who inspire our own stories.
Our friendship blossomed from pageantry to page turners, sparking a desire to show other women that they too can be their own main character. I'm Miranda.
And I'm Autumn.
And together we'll lead you through books of all genres, from epic fantasies, romance, all levels of spice, even to autobiographies of real-life heroines.
Now, we're some passionate bitches, so remember this podcast is rated R, and prepare your ears. It's time to celebrate the heroines who redefine what it means to be brave and bold.
So grab your books, beverage, and bestie, and crack open your book to page 1. And let's check in with each other because holy shit, we're doing it.
Woo! So excited. We're back. For those of you who listened to our episode 1, our Get to Know Us, you should know that was filmed a year ago. Yeah. And a lot of life happened. And then we just kept having to put this off and off and off. And welcome back to the next November. And we have returned. To you, it'll feel like no time at all. To us, we had to remember how to hook up our microphones and
oh my God,
record
seriously.
a podcast again.
I legitimately didn't have my microphone plugged in. I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. No, I'm not. No microphone, no headphones, nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And for those of you who may be watching us in real time, hi. Welcome back. You may notice both of our background aesthetics are completely different. I am doing a home renovation of my office. So as we film this series, you will slowly start to see this entire room transform into something more aesthetic. And that means we're facing a new direction. We've got new equipment. It's going to be a wild ride, but I'm really excited to be here. I do have my beverage. Miranda bought me this cup.
Yes.
Like a year and a half ago. Hey, I thought it was fitting. I wore my Valaris t-shirt today. I brought this cup. We're ready. I have the gingerbread Trader Joe's coffee creamer in here.
Delicious. We don't have a Trader Joe's. It's really unfortunate. It's fine. I'm just over here crying. It's okay.
I'm so sorry.
I'm actually very jealous. So, we mentioned open your books to page 1 because, of course, we're covering this week, and for the next couple of weeks, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Mine's on the Kindle version because I'm learning how this thingy works. But I'm extremely jealous of your t-shirt, and I will have to get my cup out for next week because this week I'm just starting with a lovely bottle of water because I'm
great. We love hydration. So what's been happening with you, Miranda, in the last, give us a quick rundown of your year since that's the last time we filmed, but then like a more recent update. Rapid fire.
Okay. Rapid fire. Quit a job, got a job, fired from that job, applied for jobs, didn't get jobs, got married, got a job, in a master's program, recording a podcast. Rapid fire.
Oh my gosh. Yours is so much better than mine. Mine just sounds like kept working, another pageant.
Yeah. Pageant.
Be a mom. That's what mine sounds like. Yours is far more interesting.
Okay, interesting perhaps.
Wait, be in a wedding.
You were in a wedding. Yes. So the last time we recorded, I was just engaged and now I'm a married woman, which is so weird and insane and awesome.
Love it. So what have you been up to these last few weeks?
Sorry, my brain just died for a second. You know what I got to do, and I think the listeners, you guys are all gonna love this. I got to see Breaking Dawn part 1 and part 2 in theaters, and I cried, and it was just so like it filled my cup. My soul felt good. Robert Pattinson, our Pat, is like in the media like nobody's business right now, and
Did you hear him say on an interview with Jennifer Lawrence that he would be down to film another Twilight movie?
Yes, which I'm like, you hate
and we all went, what happened?
This man also is calling himself a Gen Z. Like, you know what, Robert? I don't care. Whatever you want to do, I'll go to the theater. I'll watch it. I'll support it. Yes, baby. Like, I don't care.
I love it.
I'm living for it. It's definitely taking me back to like the time of being 12 years old and falling in love with Edward Cullen and Robert
Mm.
Pattinson. But yeah, that's probably like been the highlight of life lately. Oh, and I got my first Kindle stickers, which has also been very exciting. So
Very excited. What did you get
small
stickers
wins.
of? Need
I
to share.
have, yeah, I don't know if you guys will be able to see them.
We'll have to describe them too.
Yes. I have one that says, of course, this is the Kindle of a reader, Bella. Then I have a couple of Native American stickers, Lakota stickers.
Very nice.
Because my dad is Oglala Lakota. I have one that is a skeleton reading in bed with a cup of coffee, a plant, and a cat, because that felt very relatable for who I am as a person. And then,
Mhm.
of course, which a spoiler, but we're not going to talk about it just yet, really. A sticker that says, "There you are. I've been looking for you." So
Mm.
little,
Exciting.
I don't
Okay, I don't
know.
want to give that much away.
I
I need to
know.
be I need to contain myself. Well, my updates are the weather in Florida is cold now. It was 30 degrees this morning,
Okay, that is
and
cold.
that's ridiculous. Time to go back to my normal body temperature of 80.
Or just come
And
visit South Dakota.
yeah. Yeah. So cold. Not in the winter. What else? Oh, I just had my birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was super fun. Welcome to 33. And my husband was so sweet and got me tickets to see Lady Gaga in
Oh,
March. And I'm so
so cool.
excited. I was so excited. That those are like my biggest updates, I guess.
Super side note, I my dad was just in Chicago, this wonderful weird man, and he texts me and he goes, "Do you want to fly to Chicago tonight? Lady Gaga's playing and there's tickets." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I wish that I had taken him up on the opportunity because this man went and saw Lady Gaga alone, just like in his casual everyday button up and jeans. And I'm like, you live such a life and I love it for you. And I'm
Oh
very
my gosh.
jealous.
Your dad's incredible. Yeah, you know I'm planning an epic outfit.
Oh, God, of course. You have the
I've
best outfits.
I've actually already found the dress that I'm going to wrap this outfit around, and it's mock neck, long, full sleeve,
Mm.
white lace with a
Oh,
corset built into it.
uh, uh, you know,
So I'm going to
they're
make a white lace crown and like a white lace mask
shut up.
and white lace gloves.
So good
It's going to be
already.
good. Also, I would like all of our readers to appreciate the fact that, and I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay if I say this. My husband decided to like really go all out with his Halloween costume this year. I promise you this is relevant. Okay. And my daughter was Tinkerbell. I was Peter Pan. My husband was Captain Hook. When I say he went all out, he bought like the nicest versions of everything that he could. And then he put it all on, but he didn't put the Captain Hook wig on. He just put the whole outfit on. And he comes out and straight up, if you ever saw the ABC Once Upon a Time series,
Oh, yes.
he
Captain Hook.
looked like the Captain Hook from the series on the TV show. And I was like,
Drooling.
oh my God. So then I told him, I'm like, wait, like this could be so good. He's like, do you want me to order some wings? And I was like,
What a
I
man.
stopped talking. I stopped talking mostly because he was talking about get out of the gutter, everybody. Okay. He was talking about like the next Halloween costume, like next year. And he's like, I could be a vampire. I could be a lot of things. And I'm like, yes, you could be a lot of things. I was like,
Halloween
or,
doesn't have to come one time a year, baby. We
and
could
I
dress
also
up
said, I'm
lots.
like, what if I'm like, you could go to Enchanticon with me. You could go to Orlando with me and dress up. And I think he's going to wear some version of that to the Lady Gaga concert too. And this is how we came full circle. I told you it was relevant.
Except
Okay.
that we don't. Why do wings have anything to do with ACOTAR?
I don't know.
Okay, so I think that's a perfect segue for you
I don't know.
guys. We have a major
Wings
disclosure
are
to
a
share.
fantasy element, Miranda.
They are, but we're not gonna lie. We're not gonna lie. So, major disclosure on this first episode and like these first like handful of episodes is that we've both read this whole book before actually sitting
Multiple
down.
times.
Multiple times for you. This is only my second read through because, and we've mentioned this like in, the recording for you guys that came last week, but for us came a year ago, that, Autumn said, read this book. And that was what, like, oh my God, 2 years ago almost, which
Probably, yeah.
is kind of disgusting, but here we are. It's life and we're making it happen. But I read the first two and a quarter and then stopped because I was like, the initial reactions, they're so fun, right? So yes, just a little bit of a disclosure that like we do kind of know what's going on, me a little bit, Autumn completely, of course. But in our structure, we're going to kind of kick episodes off a little bit with like initial impressions. And I thought one of the perfect ways to do that for ACOTAR was when I read it the first time, I was texting Autumn my reactions as I went. So here's my reactions from the beginning to about chapter 17 or so. And we went to chapter 20 this week. So 1 through 20. If you haven't read that yet, go ahead and hit the pause button. We'll give you a second. And we're going to keep going.
Okay.
So, yes, I do have those text messages. First one. Update, made it to chapter 4, loving it so far. Put it down to make dinner and watch the series finale of Lost. Now at chapter 7, Feyre is living with the fairy whose name I don't know yet. I'm liking it so far. Oh, and now I have a name, Tamlin. and picture these as like, texting back to back to back. Chapter 17, they're warming up to each other. I said it's giving me Beauty and the Beast vibes, but of course, in a more like adult, sort of fleshed out way. I really like it so far. This is where they went to the Glen and like the pool of starlight. So that was definitely like, you could start to feel that like there was maybe a connection happening or something. If you have any idea what this book is about, there's probably going to be a little spice at some point. Then let's see. I have to make sure I know what my text messages are. I asked if I was curious if the author Sarah J. Maas took any inspiration from Beauty and the Beast, especially because then Tamlin at this point in the book like just showed her the gallery, and it very much feels like taking Belle to the library, which like art inspires art, so why the heck not? Final update for this one, this first chunk of the book. I said I finished Gilmore Girls for the first time today. I have a really bad habit of like not finishing shows that I love because I don't want them to be over. And I said I cried a lot, haha. But to console my feelings, I read the rest of the ACOTAR series. Oh, I'm reading the rest of this first chunk, but I purchased the rest of the ACOTAR series, full send, totally ready. Haven't even made it to any of the like super fun bits. So those were my initial reactions the very first time that I read this
Love
book.
it. Yeah. So you made it like part into this book and you said, great, another one.
I'm sold. I'm done. I'm in.
I love that. I very much so when I bought this book, I bought it because of TikTok, if I'm being completely honest. Like it fully convinced me. And then I found myself going back to Barnes and Noble like every week to get the next one.
Because you read
and
like
then,
a crazy person. I love it.
I'm glad you feel that way. I know some people who read like 150 plus books a year, and I
wish
don't know how they are
never.
able to do that. But needless to say, when I first read this story 2 years ago, I consumed it so fast. And since then, I've read and / graphic audioed this book 3 times. So I would not call myself an expert, okay, but I would call myself a good time reader who, just like my favorite TV shows, can reread, re-listen,
Mm.
for me to go back to a world that I'm so familiar and comfortable with. And each time I do that, I find myself just like really, truly enraptured by this world and its characters. So, and I don't know if it's something about SJM's writing that allows me to like really enter a new headspace in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
but not all books are able to do that for me. And I fortunately have been able to read a lot of books these last few years. And like I said, some of them, like I'm in it, and I'm also aware of like my world and my surroundings and where I'm at, but I get fully lost in this book. So I wrote in the margins when I read this, and a little bit more when I reread it the second time. And so some of my thoughts when I was reading through these chapters. So first off, this girl is tough. Okay. I just told y'all that I'm like, burr chilly. It's cold 30 degrees. We open the scene. She's in the dead of winter being a badass.
Couldn't be
So,
autumn.
uh,
Badass, yes. Cold, no.
no. Okay. But I really felt like even from the top of this episode, this series, this book, she has this very skewed sense of self, right? She's a very practical character. She's not trusting of others. I'm not even really sure she's trusting of herself fully,
Amen to
but
that.
but you can also tell that she's a very artistic person, and those two feel very at odds with each other. So that's why I say it feels like a skewed sense of self. Like maybe who she truly is internally is not who we meet at the beginning of the book, or not fully who we meet, if that makes sense. My next thought when I was reading this, I was like, fairies, right? I came from the world of like, all right, you're reading fantasy like Hunger Games, you're reading Harry Potter, Twilight, but books like that we grew up with. I had not read a fairy book. Okay. So I was like, what is this? Iridescent wings and small, short, petite bodies. I didn't know what I was getting into. Okay. If I'm being honest, I was like Tinkerbell.
Well, I was going to say that's about the only fairy I can think of other than
Yeah.
like,
okay. So
I don't even know what.
I didn't know what this was, but that being said, I learned real quick, and I'm actually so obsessed with fantasy and romance because of this book. And I think that's what I love about starting with this series is I know there are so many people who can say the same. This was like their gateway drug, and I was mine as well. So we have the same vice, and we can go down that road together. I also was thinking, okay, Lucian, I like this guy. He's hot. Can't see him, but the way he's described, I feel like he's hot and snarky. I thought that Calumet sounded a bit like an orgy, if I'm being honest. That's gonna be what we're talking about towards the end of this. That was
we're
like
not there yet.
We're so close.
We're just getting started. Close.
But she gets like the description. She keeps being told things about it, and we'll get to that. But as she's being told things about it, I'm like,
what is this? What's about to happen?
And then at the end of chapter 20, we meet a new character, which gives much intrigue. So those were my initial thoughts that I wrote in the margin from chapter 1 to 20.
Okay, side note, you are somebody who writes in your books, like legitimately writes in your books.
Well, if you're looking, you can see the highlights.
Oh my God. I want to be that person. I cannot damage a book. I just bought a new book. My husband bought me a book this weekend, a copy of Twilight that the edges literally say, so the lion fell in love with the lamb. And I went through each book in the store in Barnes and Noble to pick the most perfect one because it couldn't be bent. Yes. It couldn't be scratched. I want to be the person.
So get that. You have to remember that I bought this before I had a Kindle.
Which is fair.
So a lot of what I do now is in a Kindle. But that being said, I am also the type of person who can buy a book, let it apparently get soaked in a little bit of water, and then also write in it and let my toddler play with it. And then I just buy a new, prettier version of the series to have as my like trophy.
Yes. The trophies go on the bookshelf. 100%.
Yes. Okay. So I think it's time for us to hop in. Miranda, take us away. What are we getting out of this?
Yes. Now that we've gone through a little bit of the first impressions, we're going to kind of go through a mini review, if you will, kind of a spoiler free. Again, if you haven't read this chunk, like you're welcome to listen, but I'm telling you, you're definitely missing out. Like you want to read this and then come back and do the little book club with us. So, Feyre. And then I questioned myself, do we know her last name yet? Have they
Mm.
said
I
it?
don't think they've like fully said it.
I know this. I asked myself this question, so I'm not going to say it yet. Well, you think about that. I'm going to go through the review. So Feyre is a young huntress, and she's struggling to provide her family in a harsh, poverty-stricken world. And when I say poverty-stricken, imagine Hunger Games, District 12. Like we've all seen it, heard it, read it, whatever. So it's a pretty rough place to live, especially considering that they fell from wealth into poverty. So her family started off, in elegance, and fell from grace, if you will, when Feyre was like 4, 5, 6, like so young. She still hadn't learned, some of the well, in
Intricacies.
thank you, of that world yet. I can't speak this morning, but she hadn't learned some of the, I'm not going to say it. She hadn't figured out how to live like her older siblings. So Feyre's way of providing is hunting. Again, Katniss, anybody, art begets art. But I'll probably stop with the Hunger Games references, maybe, maybe not. But one day while hunting in the woods, she kills a wolf only to discover that it was actually a fairy in disguise, which is so intriguing. Which is kind of like an oh shit moment for Feyre. But hey, girls got to eat. You got to do what you got to do. She needed the hide for some money. And it was going to kill the deer that she needed for her family. So, like, we understand to an extent, right? Um, so in that moment, correct me if I'm wrong, Autumn, but she did not know it was a fairy. It's not until we get a couple of chapters later when she makes it to the fairy lands that she actually figures it out. Like you could tell that deep down she knew.
Yeah, she had this feeling in her that it was a very real possibility, but she chose to kill the wolf slash fairy anyways.
Yes. And this is like 150 years since there was this massive war. Like the humans have kind of forgotten about fairies, not completely, but she's not going to know at 19 years old what a fairy looks like or necessarily, that they can
Right.
shift
Well,
or
also,
whatever.
yeah, also in wolf form. She's not going to have all the lore.
Right, which we're going to get all of that. So she kills a fairy. There's punishment for killing a fairy, for killing another living being, I guess. So a fairy named Tamlin arrives to take her to the realm of the Fae called Prythian. So Feyre is brought to his estate, which is a large, mysterious house located within the fairylands, and she finds herself living under his protection. And it's a pretty massive change from her home where it was winter, and Tamlin's home is now very springy. She doesn't have to hunt. Like she's this almost emaciated, skinny, barely hanging on by a thread person when she first kills this fairy disguised as a wolf and then ends up in this beautiful place with abundance of food and warm weather. And she's not having to provide for her family and for her sisters who are kind of bitches. And, it's very, very different from the life that she'd been living for the last like 15 years. Initially, she's resentful from being taken from her home because of a promise that she made to her mom on her deathbed, which is very interesting. And I want to keep that in the back of my brain. And I think we all need to, of like, what is this promise and why does it matter so much to Feyre? Like, even as throughout these chapters that she starts to decide, like, maybe she's fulfilled it or, maybe she's out of this promise. It's all good. She's done. Why does that hold so much weight? Like, does that come back? What's the importance of that? So I think that's definitely something. And this is speaking from somebody who genuinely doesn't know if this comes back, but it pricked my brain as like, I feel like this is important. Um, So Feyre actually learns that Tamlin is not just a fairy, he is a high fae, and in fact, he's one of the highest fae. He is the High Lord of the Spring Court, and is not only this enigmatic character that she encounters, or is not the only enigmatic character that she encounters. Then enter Lucien, who we touched on earlier, who will give some more thoughts about. Also very intrigued by Lucien. I called him our one-eyed wonder. And in the world of the Fae, she realizes it's far more dangerous and complex than she ever could have imagined. It's filled with dark secrets, ancient curses, the masks, which we'll continue to learn about, and simmering political tensions. All of this really comes from eavesdropping, which we love Feyre for because relatable.
She's sneaky.
You got to do what you got to do, right? When you're a human and you're the only one around these fairies, you gotta figure out information how you can. So she does a lot of eavesdropping. She's also, a crazy badass and captures a Suriel to get some information about where she's at and Tamlin and the treaty and Prythian and the blight on the land and all the things. She's crazy, but we love her for it. So Feyre has to navigate these challenges while dealing with her own personal struggles that we kind of touched on, and the ever-growing connection that she's starting to feel between her and Mr. Tamlin. So we start off the book with like lots of Fae hatred, but of course, as she lives with them and gets, I joked, a case of like Stockholm syndrome, because isn't that the one where like if you're captured, you fall in love with your captor?
Yes.
Which probably relatable. He's this muscly, tall, long blonde hair. Then you've got Lucien.
Right.
Girl, it's fine. You're not the only one. Same. So she begins to fall for this gorgeous specimen of a man. Like, wouldn't we all? And then we start to get hints of why we're all here. Maybe a little bit of sexy time is a coming, but we're not there yet. We're just getting like hints of them like wanting to maybe touch each other's arms, and like she's watching like the sinew of his muscle ripple, and you can see that the way she describes Tamlin is definitely
who gets in a pool
changing.
of starlight with someone and doesn't
Naked.
feel feelings.
Naked.
What?
Oh God, the pool of starlight, which also we have to come back to, but I'm just gonna
pique my interest. I'm very curious. I'm not going to say anything else, but I'll say it when we get to other things.
Okay. So as we wrap up the first section, we start the Fire Night, Calanmai, Great Rite, all of the names for this thing that we're starting to hear a little bit about. Feels like an orgy. It feels like what is happening. And we've got this one human in this world full of fairies that is like vastly expanding in front of Feyre's eyes. She's only really seen Lucien and Tamlin. She's seen Alice. She's seen, some of the like kitchen staff in the estate. But other than that, like her view of fairies in particular is pretty small. And this was actually something I wanted to discuss. So the ACOTAR, the Baga, the Suriel, all the things, the bad monsters, are those fairies? Those are also fairies, or are they just creatures
in the Fae world?
Okay, yes, I was like, they're not fairies, right?
From the way that I understand it is that they are creatures of the Fae world, like the puka and I think it's bog. Is it bog?
Listen, we'll have to look that one up.
I've graphic audioed this enough that these should just live rent free in my brain at this point. I'll correct myself in a future episode, or y'all can correct us in the comments, but we're going to try our best with pronunciations. Okay. Don't come for me that hard.
We'll do what we can.
You can come for me like a little bit, but be gentle. Anyway. So, and they have this word for some Fae of like lesser Fae, but that also is showing the classist kind of ideals that a lot of them have. And I think when we refer to them as lesser fae, know that we're doing so in the context of the book and where our
Mm-hmm.
narrator is taking us, and less so of like, I'm categorizing you as less in my Autumn's mind.
Right. Well, and that's why I was like, I feel like I want to talk about this because, there's definitely this distinction between these like gorgeous, ethereal high fae, and then, the lesser fae are not as attractive or whatever. Like that definitely seems to be a level of how they
Mhm.
categorize. And then you've got these
Yeah.
other creatures that are scary, kind of described as disgusting. And so, yeah, creatures in the fae world. I appreciate that. But yes, we
Mhm.
get to Fire Night, Callan My, Great Right. And of course, Feyre gets herself into some trouble because she was caught by some other fairies when she was told to stay in her chamber. And can we just start calling bedrooms chambers again? Like,
Hmm.
I'm just kind of obsessed with that. Go to your chamber, stay in your chamber. I'm going to use that when I have children someday. Anyway, these fairies, and I would say these are probably lesser fae because they're a little scarier, a little bonier. They don't have maybe human like eyes. I think their skin is described as like a blue color, if I remember correctly. Um, so they're scaring her a little bit. She's had some run-ins with some creatures. So she is saved by someone. And like any good cliffhanger, as we wrap up this review of our first couple of chapters, all we know about him is this sentence: standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. And I'm pretty sure it's not Tamlin, and I'm pretty sure it's not Lucian. So who is this most beautiful man that she's ever seen? It's so intrigued, so intrigued. But yeah, throughout these initial chapters, we're really introduced to Feyre, the customs of Prythian, and of Tamlin's world specifically, because we haven't experienced any other portions of the fairy realm. And it's really interesting to see her start to kind of question. I think you really hit on this, Autumn, that at the start, Feyre's really like grappling with who she is as a person. And now she's grappling with the world around her and starting to learn that maybe it's not exactly what she thought or what she'd been taught, which is, I think that's something we can all kind of go through and understand as we grow and change and begin to, figure out who we are as people. Um,
Mhm.
and
I would
then,
argue that she knows herself even less as
oh,
we
yeah.
dive deeper into this book. That there's this point at the beginning where she thinks that she has a full understanding of who she is, even though it feels like she's suppressing the
Mm-hmm.
biggest portion of her personality. And as we go through this, I think she loses a little bit more of herself, but she's also going to slowly start to gain some things back,
Mm-hmm.
right? Trade offs, like, let me shed this outer layer. And we've seen that even in this first chunk of the book. Like, she does begin to shed little bits of her past self. And I think instead of discovering a new person, I think she's discovering who she is at her core instead.
Mm-hmm. Just breaking down that wall a little bit. We all get to this place of like, what's our protective outer layer? What's that protective wall and what's really behind it? And
Yeah.
hey, we know it can be scary. It can be scary to do that. And I definitely agree that we're seeing her kind of go through this process.
Yeah.
Um, and then, yeah, I wanted to hit on one last thing in this review. First chapters, like I said, very much giving kind of Beauty and the Beast vibes, except she's an illiterate version of Belle. And her obsession is art rather than literature. But I just,
Well, it's a good thing she can see so she can appreciate her chosen art form
no
because
kidding. But I
reading is
just,
not her forte. I feel bad for her though.
I
No
know.
one
And
taught
it's
her how to read. Like, what?
right. And again, I really hope that this comes back in these books of like, she was on her deathbed, so maybe she didn't know what she was doing. Like, I can give a little grace until I know. But her mom asks this 4, 5, 6 year old, however old she is, this big promise to take care of your family, to provide for, whatever, but didn't teach her anything. And at least from Feyre's perspective, of course, because that's the perspective that we're getting, her mom didn't really care about her and didn't take the time. And she didn't have a ton of time, but like didn't have all this I don't know,
Yeah.
desire to teach her the ways of the world. And it's like, you didn't teach her to read of all the things.
It's very interesting. And I mean, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about Feyre. Obviously, she's our main heroine in this story, she's our narrator. But I also want to dig into some of these other characters too. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take the lead on this one for just a little bit. And what I think I'd like to do is we can go back and forth if you want about each character. So I'll talk about Feyre. You can talk about Feyre. We'll go on and so forth. Okay. Actually, I lied. I want you to start. You go first.
Fair enough. So, for you guys, too, just a reminder from our initial episode that we're going to bounce back and forth between who does the mini reviews, who kind of leads these sections, especially based on who's read the book, who knows the book a little bit deeper, just to make it a little kind of, it's fun. So, Feyre. I also thought Autumn was leading this, so I made little notes. But
No, you're fine. You do your little notes. But I'm going to bounce off of what you say.
I know. So initial main character Feyre, stubborn, which like relatable, but she's also willing to do whatever it takes to survive. And I think we can see that on both ends of the spectrum. She hunts for her family. She eavesdrops. She also starts to kind of give in to liking and learning more about the fairies and the high fae because she has to. She knows that there's something going on. Like she's got to survive. And maybe the best way for her to survive is to break down that wall, to figure out a little bit more about the world around her and who she is. I also said that she's a little sad, which made me sad to write because clearly she's our main character. But also, again, isn't that relatable? Like a little sad. Her life is just, I don't know. There feels like there's so much potential there, and clearly there has to be. We've got a whole series of books that at least relate to her in some fashion. But at this point, up to 19, it's just her life has been sad.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think that sense of almost hopelessness really tells us how she's fallen so low in her situation. I have marked a couple chapters and specific portions that I wanted to use to kind of reiterate this point. So in on page 31, she's talking about her relationship with Isaac, and she uses the words a darkness running beneath it all that had drawn us to each other, that shared understanding of how wretched our lives were and would always be.
How just
Whoa.
gut wrenching. Oh,
To describe your life and your situation that you live in, it truly gives the hopelessness and the dark. And as I was reading, the first few chapters before she goes to Prythian with Tamlin, in my mind, and I'm sure other readers have this too, like I am picturing what's happening in my brain. Like it's a full on movie inside my head. And in my mind, it's black and white. There's not really color unless it's described to me.
It's very
I'm
dull.
not seeing color. I'm seeing like various shades of grays, whites, and blacks. And I think it was a lot of the writing choices and the descriptive words that didn't allow me to really envision anything bright or full of hope or joyful until we get to Prythian, because they being Sarah J. Maas, amps up the description so much and really uses Feyre's point of view in that artistic lens of how she sees color to truly display how different these worlds are. But for me, that's what Feyre really displayed. And there are two other women that we meet, and I know we don't get to know a lot of them, but it is important that we touch on them. So let's talk about her sisters. Okay. So Miranda, what were your initial thoughts, your takeaways of Nesta?
First word I wrote, bitch. Right? I mean, and of course we're getting this from nice. Now this is in Feyre's perspective, right? She's the littlest sister. I am the oldest. I don't have sisters. I have brothers, but I'm the oldest, and so maybe we're getting a little bit of a skewed perspective. I can understand that. but she's a bitch. Like she expects so much by
Mm.
giving so little. I'm thinking back to Feyre coming back from hunting, and Nesta hasn't even gotten off of her ass. I'm sorry, but here it is. She hasn't gotten off her ass to go chop firewood. You're expecting your emaciated little sister, who's providing for you in every way, shape, and form, to continue to do so. It's almost like Nesta is part of what's killing Feyre initially. And expecting money even though they're not doing anything. And I need this, I need that. But what does Feyre need? What does everybody else need? I also described her as mad. They
Mm.
fell from grace. Nesta's the oldest. She was older, so she understood the world that they lived in. And I'm sure that that would and can turn you into this hard, cold, bitchy person.
Yeah.
But also at some point, I don't know, step up, do something about it. And
Yeah.
that's, who I am as a person, but I hope to see some character growth, I guess, if she continues to be a part of
Right.
it.
I mean, her character leaves a lot to be desired when it comes to morals and
Mm,
ethics. And
mm. Yeah.
yeah. But I will say, like, my descriptions of Nera, wow, of Nesta that we get in the first few chapters, I wrote she has some major walls up. So, for example, page 17, we're like, we had that at the beginning of the book. Okay. Nesta cocked her head. I'd seen predators use that movement before.
Mm.
Something about that sentence just, ooh, it sent me. Like, I imagined a snake, like, just the way it can like twitch and move. And there's something really dangerous about that. That was so, so interesting to read. And then page 22, it says, this is from Feyre's POV, Nesta, a queen without a throne.
I have that one highlighted too.
What? That is so wild. Like the descriptions that she gives her, and then the fact that Feyre draws so many parallels between her and Nesta. So we have this giving person and someone who chooses to give nothing, but Feyre sees that they're very similar, right? Page 12. Some days I couldn't tell which of us was the most wretched and bitter. And then page 36, Nessa had always known and hated that she and I were two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't tell if Feyre thinks very little of herself or knows Nesta better than we do. And we
And
just
that's
don't
the
have enough
thing.
information yet.
Right. And we don't get a ton because she's only in the human lands for 4 chapters.
Yeah, exactly.
If that, like,
but I have to think
minimal.
about that. Right. But I have to think about that because Feyre does know Nesta better. And she is not describing Nesta as horrible, evil. She's not describing her as a bitch. She's describing her as a queen without a throne. Like, so like our perspective of Nesta is very one-dimensional, one layer. But I, in some ways, have to trust the narrator that they know better.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the next sister, Miss Elaine.
Oh, Elaine. Little
What'd you think about her?
Elaine. At this point, we definitely see more of Nesta because, like you said, Feyre's kind of comparing the two of them. She sees they share the same eyes. They're very similar in certain ways. Elaine's the middle sister. She's maybe kind of the odd one out. She's a little different and she is timid. She's a little more meek, I would say. And we don't get a ton of her, but we know that she is maybe a little more high maintenance. She likes, again, kind of like Nesta, you would assume some of the finer things in life. She wants a new cloak, a new pair of boots that she doesn't necessarily need. She wants seeds for her garden. She wants to live this privileged, relaxed life of just doing the things that give her joy, not things that require hard work.
Wow. Well, nail on the head there. I just don't really feel like we get anything special from her character. other
No.
than maybe she's like a little submissive or willfully ignorant.
Yeah.
And also perhaps the only optimistic one
Yeah, for sure.
of the whole bunch. So everyone gives her a lot of grace, I notice, and they never demand too much of her. And she's not even the youngest, which is wild. But,
Right.
I think this says a lot about her willful ignorance that Feyre describes her on page 11. It simply never occurred to her that she might be capable of getting her hands dirty.
I love that line.
Simply never occurred to her. It's so interesting to me. And, speaking of hopeful people in the bunch, I do want to then go on to Daddy Archeron. Oh, I gave his name away. I'm so sorry.
Okay, but
what else do we call him? What's his name?
So we talked about this a little bit ago, with the review, right? Dad, I don't know. I wrote in here initially Daddy Archeron.
You did. Okay, everybody. Sorry. Their last name's Archeron. It's too little too late.
Yeah, sorry guys. I don't think it doesn't give anything away.
TBH, it could have been in here and mentioned and we just didn't see it. So
honestly.
It is what it is. Anyways, hopefulness.
Yeah.
I feel like he is full of hope and love, but maybe has like little to no sense of self-preservation for him and his daughters.
Oh yeah. Like again, sorry, my brain is malfunctioning as I think of this family and I think of Daddy Archeron, which I'm curious if we ever get his name. He's pathetic. That's the one word that I wrote, and I hate to say that. Like, you hold out hope that maybe he steps up and whatever, but even Feyre kind of knows it when she she thinks that he has come to save her, but how could he? How would he? I don't know. I understand that he has been hurt. He has lost everything. He has lost mobility. But you find a way to survive. Your youngest child has found a way to survive and to provide, and you haven't. So I appreciate the hopefulness, but why are you hopeful? Because your youngest daughter thankfully stepped up to the plate. What would you have done otherwise? I don't know. Maybe I'm a little
and I don't necessarily want to get like super deep into like mental health tones, but depression is really dark, and to go from a life of luxury to not being able to even provide for your children, to having a capable body to a non-capable body, to having a wife to having not a wife, to your
he's
wife
lost
dying.
a lot.
I mean, like, he's been through so much, but it also, I think, speaks so much to his character that he has experienced so much loss. And then, on page 19, it says, he is saying, we need hope as much as we need bread and meat. We need hope, or else we cannot endure. So let her keep this hope, Feyre. Let her imagine a better life, a better world. And Feyre responds, there is no such thing.
I want to know what their mom was like. I mean, we get snippets here and there, but I'm like, okay, so Daddy Archeron and Elaine must be very similar. Yeah, absolutely. And we get this connection to like Nesta and Feyre looking like their mom. And, we hear a little bit about how they lived before their wealth crumbled. So yeah, again, maybe I'm the bitch because I just see Father Archeron as kind of this, pathetic man. But I appreciate that he has lost a lot, and good for him for continuing to have hope. I am not that kind of person, which is probably again why my viewpoint is skewed. I can be a negative Nelly, which I've learned, to deal with. But
and I'm the chronically optimistic one.
We love that for you.
There will be a better way to get through this. Well, I'll be fine. Everything's fine.
It's a good thing to learn as you get older too, right? Like that's something I've had to learn personally.
I do have some years on you.
A couple, but like I'm saying, young Miranda, man, the world sucks, falling apart. So I get this like perspective that Feyre is also showing.
I think that's enough talking about humans. I mean, yeah, humans. Let's talk about some fantasy people. Mr. Tamlin.
Oh, Tam Tam. I said initial, sullen. Then I said shifty, literally, and in the way that he gives Feyre like little bits of info and then pulls back and like wants to touch her and then doesn't. So literally shapeshifts and it's also kind of shifty. Um,
Mhm.
he's caring in a protector sort of way, which I can tell we're going to get more. We're going to get a better understanding of why Tamlin is the way that he is. And, clearly there's stuff going on in Prythian and going on in the Spring Court. He's become the High Lord. Jeez,
There
just
you
left
go.
my brain. I was going to say something else. He has become the High Lord without wanting it. He had planned to be a warrior. He has Lucian to help him as an emissary. Like this was not the life that he planned, but you can tell that he does care about the land and he cares about the people that are there. He is also very stubborn. I think
Mm,
he and Feyre are very kindred spirits in that way.
yeah. Well, I mean, most definitely, all those things. I learned to love Tamlin kind of in the same way that Feyre begins to in these chapters. Like, as she sheds layers, she forces him to shed layers. Then you
Mm-hmm.
start to like him some more. And this, of course, being her perspective and having him as kind of that savior complex makes you capable of seeing the depth to him. My question is, how far does that depth run?
Mm.
But we learn so much about him in these first few chapters. For example, the fact that he is a shapeshifter. So he's described as having, or his shapeshifter is his beast form, is
Mm.
described as having golden fur, large as a horse, a body that's feline, a head that's wolfish, curled elk like horns that protrude from his head with black dagger like claws and yellow fangs, and green eyes flecked with amber. I will be totally honest. When I read this for the first time, I couldn't see it. My
It's a
brain wasn't
lot.
that creative. I was like, it was like a Tetris sort of moment where the pieces weren't fitting and I didn't get it. Since then, the joys of artificial intelligence
Yeah, yeah.
have allowed me to better understand what this looks like and I get it. And yeah, if that busted through my door, I'd be like, we gonna die.
Mm.
We all gonna die. Okay.
You've seen Narnia, like, right? Like
Yeah.
Aslan, the giant lion. That was like
Yeah.
initially all that my brain could see too. Like it,
Oh,
it took time for me to like put those pieces together. So I was like, okay, Aslan or like the Minotaur, we'll just
with
throw those
horns.
together. Like that's same. That's as far as my brain can take this. Which thank you, Sarah J. Maas, for being the creative wonder that you are, that you could come up with this. I wish.
Right?
I wish.
So then there's Lucian, which we've already described him as a little spicy.
Mm-hmm. A little
Okay.
snarky.
One-eyed, right?
I'd
Um,
wonder.
one-eyed wonder. Uh, I definitely can tell that he is not the one who's going to sugarcoat things for Feyre. Okay. He's
Oh
going to
yeah.
tell it as it is. And in many ways, I really feel like he's the only person there being truly authentic with her,
Mm-hmm.
or at least like doesn't care enough about her to provide a protective layer over the information,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is helpful for me as a reader because I
Right.
feel like I can trust what he says
Mm-hmm. You're not
for
so
the most
lost. You're
part.
not like, what's truth? What's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said with Tamlin, he pulls back so much, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we'll learn why. But I agree. Lucian at least is just kind of like, fuck it. I'm gonna pretty much say what I want. Um, I said he's snarky. I think you can tell he's hurt, which of course we learn a little bit about his backstory. And I think in the way that he interacts with Feyre, and I don't know if it's the fact that she's a woman, I don't know if it's the fact that she's a human, maybe it's both of those things combined. And then again, as we learn his story a little bit more, you can tell that there's some hurt in his past. And I think maybe part of the reason that he's so willing to be forthcoming, weirdly, is because he isn't as trusting. So he's like, you know what? Screw it. I don't care if you die. I don't care if the Suriel eats you. I don't care if the, whatever ultimately come and get you. It kind of doesn't like it matters to me, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I am married to a redheaded man. So there's just something about Lucian that if my husband could grow his hair long, yes, please. I don't want him to be one-eyed, but if it happened, I'd get him a fox mask.
Oh,
But
that's so funny. Um, okay, now you wrote down Alice, and like, shame on me. I didn't write her down as one of the main characters, and I'm so sorry, Alice.
when I was putting down my main characters, she's not, right? She's a side character, but I also can appreciate what she's adding to the
I
story.
mean, we get more from her than we do Nesta, so
Right.
feels a little bit more main character energy.
Okay, main characters, Tamlin, Feyre. I would say Lucian's main character, but we got to touch on the side characters at least a little bit here. I should have put the Suriel down. So intrigued. But
Next time.
Alice, yes. Um, and actually, I inserted a quote from Alice about the Suriel when she says, "Next time that fool Lucian gives you advice on how to trap the Suriel, you come to me. Dead chickens, my sagging ass." All you needed to do was offer it a new robe and it would have groveled at your feet. This is on page 140. And I just love, again, she's not necessarily, I don't want to say she doesn't give information because she does, but she also just kind of snaps back. She's not afraid to, throw Feyre's tattered clothes at her and say, "This is what you want. You want to talk to the Suriel, then why don't you ask somebody who can actually help you with it?" I just kind of love her sass a little bit.
Yeah.
Also really intrigued to learn, a little bit more about her story. We know that she cares for her sister's children. And I think there's more to Alice. And I think she can really offer something to Feyre that maybe everybody else isn't willing to.
Yeah. I mean, how about a motherly affection that she doesn't
She's
know
never
or has
had.
ever had? This is the first female that we know of who has provided Feyre any sort of actual positive energy from
Mm,
a female role model, which is not necessarily how she's going to be described yet, like a female role model, but whether Feyre realizes it or not, this is the first motherly or sisterly or aunt style of affection that she's getting
mm-hmm.
from a woman. And it's interesting how quickly Feyre can let her guard down around Alice, considering her experience with other women is not necessarily one of vulnerability. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, Feyre and her sisters all slept in one bed together and they're comfortable around one another, but Feyre could never really be herself without fear of, retaliation or
Mm-hmm.
being irritated by her sisters, vice versa. So this is really interesting, the place that Alice has in Feyre's life, which I think we can grow to appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. And there will be more to come. Like we're still at the start. She's a bird mask. We've got a fox, and I guess Tamlin's is really just kind of an ornate gold. So there's more to be told. There's definitely more to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. So there were some parts of the book that when I first read it, I was kind of like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? I don't understand. And so we're going to get into some pieces that maybe didn't quite click for us. Maybe it's something that we, are like, I'm sorry, what is this? What is this story plot happening? And or perhaps it's just, oh, I'm intrigued. This didn't click for me, but maybe it will click later. So mine was the whole premise of the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
I found it so odd. Like, your options are you could die now or come live with me in a magical land forever.
Oh, the choices.
Those are not on equal playing fields, okay? I mean, literally, page 37, you can either die tonight or offer your life to Prythian by living in it forever and forsaking your human realm. seems like a strange trade-off to me.
Debatable.
That was the one
kidding.
piece that I was like, what? So, yeah.
Yeah, I agreed with that. It's kind of this like it's just an interesting concept. It's also interesting to me that the humans kind of forgot about all of this and like, they know that there's this treaty, but like what are the details of this thing? Don't you want to know if you're terrified? I mean, the humans are terrified of the fairies and the creatures of the fairy realm because they believe and some of them did as we learn that they were enslaved, they were murdered. But we also learned that some fairies and creatures helped the humans when this treaty was created. So it's interesting to me that it's just become very forgotten. And then they've got these iron like bracelets and things they put above their door that don't really matter. It almost made me think of the glamour that's put on Feyre's family to not question where she's been. As I read, I was like, is there a glamour on the human world? Is there something to make them forget, to make them complacent, to make them stay? I don't know. Also the treaty was all very interesting to me.
Yeah. Interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah. And I wrote down like a couple of the things that we've mentioned throughout the podcast so far that we don't have to dive into again, of course, but her mom's promise, Feyre's mom's promise. I think that's something that's really piqued my interest. The blight and the masks, what's going on with this like reduction of power is really, such this high concept right now to Feyre and to the rest of us. What does it mean? What exactly is happening that could also affect her and the human world? And then, as we touched on before, a pool of starlight. I am a nighttime gal. I love the stars. I love the moon. I'm like, what is this and where can I find it? So those are the things that we've definitely touched on that I'm like, these are interesting. And if I know anything about Sarah J. Maas and the worlds that she's created, it'll all come back in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I also think another thing that has piqued my interest, right? It's not clicking yet. Will it click eventually? Is this guy that we meet at the end of this chunk that we're reviewing.
This beautiful man.
I mean, that's such an interesting way to describe someone who is not the main character of our story, or is not the male main character, the MMC of our story. So, want to know more about that. And I'm intrigued to see where we go. Now, we are going to evolve this next section of our podcast as we go on, right? So we're calling it the Listener's Corner. Obviously, as you're listening, we want you to contribute. So This is the place where, as we get comments or questions from listeners, we want to have you involved. This is that segment where we want to pull you in and read through what you have to say, the questions you might have or comments you have about, the next chapter that we're reading through. So this is where we'll do that. However, since we are just beginning this podcast and it needs to evolve, we're going to take some moments from TikToks, Instas, and, kind of share them here. And right now, I'm just going to spend this time highlighting some themes or ideas that I want us to continue focusing on. And the first being Feyre, who at her core is very feminine. Right? Her longing for a peaceful, quiet life that allows her to paint and create without burden or guilt. Relatable. And on the outside, right? Sounds lovely. On the outside, we know her as defensive, harsh, pessimistic, resentful of her family, thinking about how she evolves as a character and as a woman. I want us to focus more on the inner monologue moments where she lets that guard down, the moments where she allows herself to see color, to imagine how she would recreate something, and instances where she softens just enough for us as a reader to also relax, and seeing how that piece of her evolves through her heroine journey.
I also love the color pieces. Like, I love the way that she describes the fae and the flowers. And I love those moments when, like you said, that's such a perfect way to describe it, of relaxing. Her character relaxes so we can relax into the world, even for just a moment. I think that's really beautiful. But I'm excited for people to share, what piqued their interest and what they want to know more about, what they want to hear about. I think that's like the best section of the podcast personally. And we're not even sure what it's gonna be. But and then as we wrap up, we kind of want to touch on the heroine's journey. So when we conceptualized the High Queen podcast, we really wanted this to be about those strong female characters. Sometimes they won't be strong, and that's okay. And with Feyre, we've touched on it a lot. We haven't gotten into her journey too much. We're only 20 chapters in. There's a lot to learn. We have learned a little bit, like Autumn just touched on. She's very feminine. She wants to live this simple life where she doesn't have to feel pessimistic or like she's constantly having to provide for others, which I think is very interesting. And weirdly enough, we're about halfway through this book already. And, we have little bits and pieces of Feyre, but I definitely think that it's going to continue to grow because at this point it's been a lot of the like world building and the scene setting, which we need. We're in this place that we don't understand. We're seeing these characters like Tamlin's beast form that kind of take a lot for our brain to put together what this all looks like. So I appreciate that that's been kind of the bulk of where we've been so far. And I can tell that we're going to start getting into the meat of it, especially with something coming. We feel this like looming presence of the blight and this infamous she character that Tamlin and Lucien have continued to refer to. Like, who is she? There's something coming with that. And of course, we know that there's something a brewing a little bit between Feyre and Tamlin. Like, what that's going to turn into, we don't know. But at this point, something's happening. She's a very family-driven, stubborn woman that I personally can relate to. So that honestly helps me even be a little bit introspective at the start of her journey and connect with her, I think, on a deeper level. Because I wrote here and I forgot about it when we were talking about Nesta, but you can tell that Feyre cares so deeply of kind of what the other people around her think of her, even if she doesn't want to, especially when it comes to Nesta's words about her being a beast, and then her looking at Tamlin and Lucien as a beast, and them thinking of her as insignificant. And I understand this feeling of like getting in your own head and needing to break out of that to move forward on your journey, your quest, whatever. So I really appreciate just kind of getting to know her and connecting with her in that way as we start the book.
Yeah, I know I've read this a lot, but I didn't realize you're right. We are like almost halfway through the book. And throughout this half, essentially, I've really enjoyed how she evolves this hate in her heart slowly into a longing for forgiveness and acceptance, right? The juxtaposition of those two moments in the book, that this is what it really does for me. Okay. We go from skinning a wolf who she acknowledges could very likely be a fae and thinks, well, better dead regardless. And agrees with the villagers who call the children of the blessed fairy loving whores, and then skip jump
fairy loving whore.
Skip jump to page 154, because I wouldn't want to die alone, because I'd want someone to hold my hand until the end and a while after that. That's something everyone deserves, human or fairy. I regret what I did to Andress. I regret that there was such hate in my heart. I wish I could undo it. And I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry. Like, those two moments we can see from where we are at the beginning of the book to our halfway point. That is such an evolution. And yes, such a major character arc for her, because it takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong, to admit when someone else, particularly whose opinions you care about, takes vulnerability and openness that many of us, right, over here in the human world, have to work really hard to achieve that. And I really felt like this opened her up and allows for us as readers to take in this world with a new lens that is more willing to see beauty without prejudice and let that get in our way. And in many ways, I feel like it's a lesson that we, not just as women, but human beings, can really take on and need to resonate with us. It makes me really excited to continue her evolution and see how she can grow over the next half of this book.
Yeah. I mean, look at what we've gotten so far. I can only imagine what we're going to get next. And I think we're going to split this second half into 2 more chunks, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So, Court of Thorns and Roses. Dear Lord.
We've been talking a lot.
Will be a 3-episode part before we moved on to the next book. So I know this one is pretty long, but we had a lot of book to cover, right?
Half the book.
And I know we want to keep going. So let's, turn the page. We've got to close the book on this episode for today so that we can all get back to reading.
But hey, every epic needs a cliffhanger, right? So let's just savor that suspense a little bit.
Remember to like, share, and follow and subscribe. And please write a review. That's a free way for you to help us.
Unless it's bad. Just kidding. It will help us grow and help us learn. I'm kidding.
Not. Yes. And before you remove your bookmarks to prepare for next week, remember that whether you are conquering your own kingdom or just cozying up with a good book, you are the main character of your own epic tale.
All right, queens. For real now, you got to put the book down, hold your crown high, and of course, we will catch you on the next page.